The space station shook again as another explosion lit up the darkness outside. Captain Kethera pressed her crystalline hands against the cold metal wall and felt the vibrations travel through her body. Through the large window, she could see the orange glow of her home planet burning in the distance. The Vorthok machines had been bombing it for 3 days straight. "Captain, we lost contact with the colony on Zalera Prime," her communications officer reported. His voice was barely a whisper. Everyone knew what losing contact meant. Another 1,000,000 of their people were gone. Kethera closed her eyes for a moment. In just 2 weeks, the Vorthok Empire had destroyed 4 of their 7 worlds. The machines moved from planet to planet like a plague, killing everything alive and taking what they wanted. No one had ever stopped them before. No one had even tried to fight back for very long. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked. "Captain, maybe 15 if we count the damaged ones. 12 ships against the entire Vorthok fleet." It was hopeless, but Kethera had to try something. Her people were dying, and she was their last hope. The door to the communication room slid open with a soft hiss. Lieutenant Commander Jake Murphy sat at his desk on Earth, drinking his 3rd cup of coffee and listening to the radio chatter from across the galaxy. It was a quiet night shift at the Galactic Communications Array. Most nights were quiet. Earth got messages about trade deals, diplomatic meetings, and sometimes distress calls from ships with broken engines. But tonight was different. Jake almost spilled his coffee when he heard the voice speaking in broken English through the static. The translation software was working hard to make sense of the alien words, but the emotion came through clearly. Someone was scared. Someone was dying. "This is Captain Kethera of the Zalani Defense Corps," the voice said. "We are under attack by the Vorthok Empire. Our worlds are burning. Our people are dying. We need help. Please, anyone who can hear this message, we need help." Jake sat up straight and turned up the volume. He had heard of the Zalani before. They were the crystal people who lived in the Outer Rim territories. Peaceful folks who never bothered anyone. They had helped Earth once, many years ago, when the colonies on Proxima were dying from radiation sickness. The Zalani had sent medical supplies and asked for nothing in return. "We have maybe 2 days before they reach our last 3 worlds," the voice continued. "We cannot stop them. We have tried. We are not warriors. We need evacuation ships. Need protection. Please help us. Please remember us." The message repeated 3 more times before cutting off into static. Jake stared at the communication panel for a long moment, then reached for his phone. Admiral Lisa Carter was asleep when her phone rang. She had been dreaming about her old ship, the UES Guardian, and the battle where she had earned her first medal. The phone rang 4 times before she answered it. "This better be important, Murphy," she said, recognizing the number. "Admiral, you need to hear this," Jake said. "The Zalani are in trouble. Big trouble." Lisa sat up in bed and listened as Jake played the recording. She remembered the Zalani well. 20 years ago, when she was just a captain, the colonies on Proxima had been hit by solar radiation from a dying star. Thousands of people were getting sick and dying. Earth's medical supplies were not enough, and they were too far away to send help quickly. Then the Zalani had appeared. Their crystal ships had arrived carrying medicines that could cure radiation sickness. They had saved over 50,000 human lives and asked for nothing in return. When Lisa had tried to offer payment, the Zalani captain had simply said, "Friends. Help friends. How bad is it?" Lisa asked. "Real bad, Admiral. The Vorthok have already destroyed most of their worlds. They're asking for evacuation ships." Lisa was quiet for a moment. The Vorthok Empire was known throughout the galaxy. They were machines that had been built by some long-dead race. And now they traveled from world to world, killing everything alive and taking what they needed. They had destroyed 17 different species over the past century. No one had ever defeated them in battle. But the Zalani had helped Earth when humans were dying. Lisa remembered the faces of the colonists who had lived because of Zalani medicine. She remembered the crystal captain who had smiled when she said goodbye. "Murphy, get me a direct line to Fleet Command," Lisa said, "and wake up every ship captain in the system. We're going to help them, Admiral." With respect, The Vorthok have never been beaten. They adapt to every weapon, every tactic. They learn from every battle and get stronger. I don't care, Lisa, said the Zilani saved our people when they were dying. Now it's our turn. Within an hour, every military base in human space received the same message. Operation Redemption was a go. All available ships were to report for immediate deployment. This was not a rescue mission. This was not an evacuation. This was war. Captain Rick Davis was sleeping in his quarters on the UES Defiance when the alarm woke him up. He had been dreaming about his daughter's birthday party, which he was supposed to attend next week. The alarm meant those plans were about to change. All hands to battle stations, the ship's computer announced. This is not a drill. All hands to battle stations. Rick pulled on his uniform and ran to the bridge. His first officer, Commander Amy Foster, was already there, reading orders from Fleet Command. What's the situation? Rick asked. The Zilani are under attack by the Vorthok Empire, Amy said. Admiral Carter is mobilizing everything we have. Rick knew about the Zilani. Every officer in the fleet learned about them during training. Were the aliens who had saved human lives and asked for nothing in return? They were the good guys. How many ships are we talking about? Rick asked. Everything, sir. Every ship that can fly. Every pilot that can fight. The Admiral wants the largest human fleet ever assembled. Rick looked out at the stars and thought about the crystal people who were dying light years away. Had called for backup, probably expecting a few ships and some evacuation transport. They had no idea what was coming. Then let's give them everything we have, Rick said. The first ships started arriving at the rally point within 6 hours. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Defiance, and watched as more and more vessels dropped out of hyperspace. Each time a new ship appeared, her smile grew wider. Captain Rick Davis had brought his carrier. The UES Retribution, loaded with 2 squadrons of the newest Storm-class fighters. The pilots were young and eager, ready to prove themselves in their first real battle. Commander Amy Foster had arrived with 3 supply ships carrying enough food, fuel, and ammunition to keep a fleet fighting for months. But it was not just the official military ships that came. Word had spread through human space faster than Lisa had expected. Mercenary captains who usually worked alone were forming squadrons. Pirates who normally fought each other were flying together. Even civilian transport pilots were volunteering to help. Tony Blake was one of the first mercenaries to arrive. His ship, the Broken Chain, looked like it had been through a dozen battles and barely survived each one. The hull was covered with patches and repairs, but the weapons were clean and ready. Tony had served in the Earth Navy before becoming a hired gun, and he still remembered what it meant to fight for something bigger than money. Admiral Carter, Tony said over the communication channel, heard you might need some extra firepower. Blake, your reputation precedes you, Lisa replied. But this is not a paying job. We are doing this because it is right. Sometimes right is payment enough, Tony said. I owe the Zilani a favor too. They fixed my ship once when I was stranded in their space. Never asked for anything in return. Lisa was surprised to hear that. It seemed like everyone had a story about the Zilani helping them. The Crystal people had been making friends across the galaxy for decades. A small act of kindness at a time. The next surprise came when Lisa Santos contacted the fleet. Lisa Santos was known throughout human space as one of the most dangerous pirates alive. Her ship, the Red Dawn, had robbed merchant vessels from Earth to the outer colonies. She should have been in prison, not offering to help with a rescue. Mission, Admiral. This is Captain Santos, the pirate said. I know what you were thinking. Why would a pirate want to help with something like this? The thought had crossed my mind, Lisa Carter replied. The Vorthok killed my sister, Santos, said. Her voice was quiet but filled with anger. She was on a trading ship that got too close to machine territory. They destroyed the whole crew just because they were alive. I want to make them pay. Lisa thought about it for a moment. Santos was a criminal, but she was also one of the best ship commanders in human space. Her crew was loyal and experienced in fighting against impossible odds. You follow my orders, Santos. No breaking away to settle personal scores. Understood, Admiral. My guns are yours. By the end of the second day, Lisa could not believe what she was seeing. The rally point looked like the largest military gathering in human history. 200 warships floated in formation, their running lights creating a field of stars against the black of space. Destroyers, frigates, carriers, battleships, and dozens of smaller vessels, all waiting for the order to move out. Sam Chen had arrived with his transport ship, the Lucky Star. He was not a military pilot, just a civilian who carried cargo between the colonies. But when he heard about the mission, he had loaded his ship with medical supplies and volunteered to help with evacuation efforts. I may not be able to fight, Sam told his crew, but I can help save lives. That is enough for me. Most impressive sight was the arrival of the UES Vengeance, the newest dreadnought in the human fleet. The massive ship was over 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Captain Beth Rogers had pushed her engines to the limit to get there in time. Admiral Carter, Beth said over the communication channel, "The Vengeance is ready for battle." "Good to have you, Rogers." "How are your weapons?" "Every gun is loaded and ready. My crew has been training for this their whole careers." Lisa looked out at the assembled fleet and felt something she had not felt in years: pride. Not just in the ships or the weapons, but in the people who would come when called. Humans from every part of space, from every walk of life, all united by a simple idea: when someone asks for help, you help them. Admiral Commander Amy Foster said, "We are receiving a message from the Zilani." Lisa nodded. "Put it through." Captain Cathara appeared on the communication screen. She looked tired and scared, but her eyes widened when she saw the number of ships behind Lisa. Admiral Carter Cathara said, "We asked for help with evacuation. We did not expect this, Captain. When humans make a promise, we keep it," Lisa replied. "You saved our people 20 years ago. Now we save yours. But Admiral, there are so many ships. This looks like an invasion fleet, not a rescue mission." "Lisa," smiled Captain, "you called for backup? You brought everything we have?" Cathara was quiet for a moment, staring at the massive human fleet. The Vorthok have never been defeated. They adapt to every weapon, learn from every battle. They will destroy you. Maybe, Lisa said. But they have never fought humans before. They have never seen what we do when someone hurts our friends. I do not understand. You will, Lisa said. How long until they reach your remaining worlds? 10 hours, maybe 20. Then we leave in 6 hours. That will give us time to get there and set up our battle formation. After the communication ended, Lisa turned to address her fleet. Every ship captain was listening, waiting for orders. "People of Earth," she began, "today we go to war. Not for territory or resources, but for something more important. We go to war for friendship. We go to war for honor. We go to war because it is right." The response came from 200 ships at once. "Aye, Admiral. Vorthok think they are unstoppable because they are machines. They think they can predict every move, counter every tactic. They are wrong. They have never fought creatures who fight with their hearts instead of their computers." Lisa paused and looked out at the fleet one more time. 6 hours we jump to hyperspace. When we arrive, we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten human friends. We show them what backup really means. The Vorthok command ship detected the human fleet 3 hours before they arrived in Zilani space. The massive machine intelligence that controlled the Vorthok Empire had never seen anything like it. 200 ships moving together in perfect formation, approaching at maximum speed. The Vorthok AI calculated the threat level immediately. It had fought many species before, and always won by adapting to their tactics. The machines would study how the enemy fought, learn their patterns, and then counter every move. It had worked against 17 different alien races. It would work against humans too. The AI redirected 3 assault groups to intercept the human fleet. 90 Vorthok ships moved to block the humans before they could reach the remaining Zilani worlds. Each Vorthok vessel was controlled by advanced computers that could think faster than any living creature. They had shields that could adapt to any weapon and hulls that could repair themselves during battle. "Captain, Rick Davis stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and watched the enemy ships appear on his sensors. The Vorthok vessels looked like giant metal insects, all sharp angles and glowing red lights. They moved in perfect formation, each ship knowing exactly where the others were at all times. "Admiral Carter," Rick said over the communication channel. "Enemy contact. 90 ships, approaching fast." "I see them, Captain," Lisa replied from the Defiance. "All ships prepare for battle. Remember the plan." The plan was simple, maybe too simple. The humans would charge straight at the enemy and fight as hard as they could. No fancy tactics, no clever strategies. Just raw aggression and the willingness to take losses to achieve victory. "Commander." Nathan Price commanded a squadron of destroyers on the left flank of the human formation. His ships were smaller and faster than the enemy vessels, but they packed a serious punch. Nathan had studied the Vorthok for years and knew their weakness. They relied too much on their computers and not enough on instinct. "This is Price," he said to his squadron. "We go in fast and hard. Do not give them time to analyze our attack patterns." The first shots came from the Vorthok ships. Bright red energy beams cut through space, aimed with perfect accuracy. But the humans were already moving, breaking formation, and scattering in all directions. The computer-controlled enemy fire hit empty space where the human ships had been seconds before. Rick launched his fighters immediately. 40 Storm-class fighters screamed out of the Retribution's launch bays, moving faster than the Vorthok's sensors could track. The young pilots had trained for this moment their entire careers. But nothing could have prepared them for the reality of battle. Lieutenant Alex Thompson led the first fighter squadron in what looked like a suicide charge directly at the enemy flagship. The Vorthok AI calculated that the small human ships would be destroyed before they could do any damage. He was planning to confuse it. The human fighters flew in patterns that made no sense to the machine intelligence. It would charge straight at a target, then suddenly veer away at the last second. They would group together, then scatter without warning. Some pilots flew alone, while others stayed in tight formation. The Vorthok computers tried to predict what the humans would do next, but every prediction was wrong. Tony Blake brought his mercenary squadron in from the right flank. The Broken Chain and 5 other privateer ships attacked the enemy formation from an angle the Vorthok had not expected. Tony's tactics were based on pirate raids, hit-and-run attacks that relied on speed and surprise rather than superior firepower. "Remember, boys," Tony said to his crews, "we are not here to trade shots with these metal monsters. Hit them fast, hurt them bad, and get out before they can respond." The mercenary ships opened fire with everything they had, then immediately changed course and moved to a new position. By the time the Vorthok returned fire, the humans were already somewhere else. It was exactly the kind of fighting that the machine intelligence had never encountered before. But the real surprise came when Lisa Santos brought her pirates into the battle. The Red Dawn and 2 other pirate ships did something that shocked both the Vorthok and the other human crews. They rammed the enemy vessels at full speed. "Santos, what are you doing?" Admiral Carter shouted over the communication channel. "Something they will never expect," Santos replied as her ship crashed into a Vorthok cruiser. The impact destroyed both vessels in a massive explosion, but it also created a gap in the enemy formation that other human ships could exploit. The Vorthok AI began to malfunction. It had been designed to learn from battle and adapt to enemy tactics, but the humans were not using tactics in any recognizable pattern. They were fighting with emotion instead of logic, making decisions based on instinct rather than calculation. Commander Nathan Price saw the confusion in the enemy formation and pressed his attack. Destroyers charged straight at the largest Vorthok ships, firing their main guns at point-blank range. The enemy shields absorbed most of the damage, but the human weapons were designed to overload defensive systems through sheer volume of fire. "Keep shooting!" Nathan yelled to his crews. "Do not give them time to adapt." Captain Beth Rogers brought the massive dreadnought U.S. Vengeance into the center of the battle. The huge ship was a target that the Vorthok could not ignore, and they focused their fire on its thick armor. But Beth had expected this. While the enemy was busy trying to destroy her ship, the rest of the human fleet was free to attack from all sides. The battle raged for 2 hours. Human ships were destroyed, their crews killed or captured, but for every human vessel lost, the Vorthok lost too. The machine intelligence that had conquered 17 species found itself unable to cope with human unpredictability. Lieutenant Alex Thompson's fighter was damaged, his engines failing and his weapons running low on power. But instead of retreating, he aimed his crippled ship at an enemy destroyer and hit his afterburners. The small fighter crashed into the much larger Vorthok vessel, and both ships exploded in a ball of fire. "Thompson," Rick shouted, but it was too late. The young pilot was gone, but his sacrifice had opened another hole in the enemy formation. All across the battlefield, humans were making the same choice. When their ships were too damaged to fight, they used them as weapons. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they rammed the enemy. The Vorthok had never seen anything like it. Admiral Carter watched the battle from the bridge of the Defiance and felt a mixture of pride and sorrow. Her people were dying, but they were also winning. The mighty Vorthok Empire, which had never lost a battle, was being defeated by creatures they had underestimated. "All ships," Lisa said over the communication channel. "The enemy is breaking. Press the attack." For the first time in their existence, the Vorthok began to retreat. The Vorthok retreat lasted only 30 minutes before they regrouped and attacked again. But something had changed in their behavior. The machine intelligence was no longer confident. It was confused and angry. Admiral Lisa Carter studied the enemy formation on her tactical display. The Vorthok ships were moving differently now, more cautiously. They were trying to stay at long range and avoid close combat with the human vessels. "They are learning to fear us," she said to her bridge crew. "But that makes them more dangerous, not less." The second wave of Vorthok ships was larger than the first. 150 vessels approached the human fleet, their weapons already charging for another battle. But this time, the machine intelligence had a different plan. Instead of trying to understand human tactics, it would simply destroy everything from a safe distance. Captain Rick Davis saw the enemy's strategy immediately. "Admiral, they are staying back and using long-range weapons. They do not want to get close to us anymore." "Then we make them get close," Lisa replied. "All ships prepare for Operation Chaos." Operation Chaos was something the human commanders had planned during the journey to Zilani space. It was based on an old Earth military strategy that had been used in naval battles centuries ago. The idea was simple: do something so unexpected that the enemy would have no choice but to react. Commander Julie Martinez led the first part of the operation. Her ship, the UES Storm, was one of the fastest in the human fleet. She took her vessel and 12 other fast ships directly toward the enemy formation at maximum speed. "You are outnumbered 15-1, Rick said over the communication channel. "Are you sure about this?" "Sometimes you have to be crazy to win," Julie replied. "Trust me, Captain." The Vorthok AI calculated that the small human force would be destroyed easily. It directed 40 ships to intercept them, confident that superior numbers would guarantee victory. But Julie was not planning to fight all 40 ships. She was planning to make them chase her. The human ships reached the edge of the Vorthok formation and immediately turned around, running back toward their own fleet. The 40 enemy vessels followed just as Julie had hoped. The machine intelligence saw this as an opportunity to destroy a portion of the human force before the main battle began. But Admiral Carter had been waiting for this moment. As soon as the Vorthok ships separated from their main formation, she gave the order for the rest of the human fleet to attack. "All ships, execute Operation Chaos. Hit them now." 150 human vessels charged directly at the remaining Vorthok formation. The enemy had been expecting a long-range battle, but suddenly they were facing an aggressive close-quarters assault. The machine intelligence tried to adapt, but the human attack was too fast and too chaotic. Captain Beth Rogers brought the U.S. Vengeance straight into the center of the enemy formation. The massive dreadnought's armor was thick enough to survive. The concentrated fire from dozens of Vorthok ships and its weapons were powerful enough to destroy anything that got too close. "This is for all the species you murdered," Beth said as she fired the ship's main guns at point-blank range. Tony. Blake and his mercenaries used the confusion to attack the enemy flanks. The broken chain had been repaired since the last battle, and Tony was eager to prove that human pirates could fight just as well as human soldiers. Time to show these machines what real chaos looks like, Tony said to his crew as they opened fire on a Vorthok heavy cruiser. But the real genius of Operation Chaos came from the civilian volunteers. Sam Chen and dozens of other transport pilots had been given a special mission. While the military ships fought the main battle, the civilians would sneak past the enemy lines and begin evacuating the Zilani population. Remember, Sam said to the other civilian pilots, "We are not warriors. Our job is to save lives, not take them." The Lucky Star and 30 other transport ships slipped past the fighting and headed for the remaining Zilani worlds. The Vorthok were so focused on the human fleet that they did not notice the small civilian vessels until it was too late. Meanwhile, the battle continued to rage in space above the Zilani system. The Vorthok AI was beginning to show signs of serious malfunction. It had been designed to learn from combat and improve its tactics, but human behavior was too random for it to process effectively. Commander Nathan Price discovered this weakness by accident. His destroyer squadron was attacking a group of Vorthok ships. When one of his pilots made a mistake and flew directly into enemy fire, the young pilot should have been killed instantly. But his ship's shields held just long enough for him to ram the enemy vessel. "Did you see that?" Nathan said to his tactical officer. Their weapons did not fire at full power. They hesitated. Nathan realized that the Vorthok AI was spending so much processing power trying to understand human tactics that it was making errors in basic combat operations. The machines were literally thinking themselves into confusion. "All ships," Nathan said over the squadron channel, "fly like you are crazy. Do not follow any patterns. Make it impossible for them to predict what you will do next." The human pilots took his advice to heart. They flew in loops and spirals, attacked from unexpected angles, and broke off combat just when the enemy expected them to press forward. Some pilots even flew their ships upside down or backwards, just to confuse the Vorthok sensors. The machine intelligence began to overload. Red warning lights flashed throughout the Vorthok command ship as the AI struggled to process the chaotic human attack patterns. For the first time in its existence, the artificial mind that controlled the Empire experienced something like panic. Lisa Santos had survived her ramming attack by evacuating to an escape pod at the last second. She was picked up by Tony Blake's ship and immediately asked for a new vessel to command. "Give me anything that flies and has guns," she said. "I am not done fighting yet." Tony assigned her to one of his damaged ships, and Santos immediately took it back into battle. She flew directly at the largest Vorthok vessel she could find and opened fire with everything the small ship had. "This is for my sister," she shouted as her weapons tore into the enemy hull. The tide of battle turned when Captain Rick Davis made a discovery that changed everything. His fighters had been attacking a Vorthok cruiser when they noticed something strange. The enemy ship's weapons were firing in a pattern that repeated every 30 seconds. "Admiral Carter," Rick said over the communication channel, "I think their AI is stuck in a loop. It keeps repeating the same attack sequence." Lisa looked at her tactical display and saw that Rick was right. Several Vorthok ships were showing the same behavior, firing their weapons in predictable patterns that the humans could easily avoid. "The machine mind is breaking down," she realized. "It cannot handle our chaos." The Vorthok AI made one final attempt to regain control of the battle. It ordered all remaining ships to focus their fire on the human flagships, hoping to destroy Admiral Carter and break human morale. But the machine intelligence had forgotten one important thing about humans. They protect their leaders. Every human ship in the fleet moved to defend the Defiance. Destroyers, cruisers, fighters, and even civilian transports formed a protective wall around the flagship. The Vorthok weapons hit the defending ships instead of their intended target. Admiral Commander Amy Foster said from her position on the bridge, "The entire fleet is protecting us." Lisa felt tears in her eyes as she watched her people sacrifice themselves to keep her alive. "Signal all ships," she said. "Tell them we are proud to serve with them." The second battle ended with another Vorthok retreat. But this time they did not regroup for another attack. The machine intelligence was too damaged to continue fighting effectively, for the first time in their history. The Vorthok Empire had been defeated by a supposedly inferior enemy. The humans had learned something important about their strange opponents. The Vorthok were not invincible. They could be confused, they could be defeated, and most importantly, they could be afraid. The Vorthok Empire made one last desperate attempt to destroy the human fleet. Every remaining machine ship in the sector converged on the Zilani system, creating the largest Vorthok force ever assembled. 250 vessels appeared. From hyperspace, their red lights glowing like angry stars in the darkness. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched the enemy fleet approach. Her own forces had been reduced to 130 ships after 2 brutal battles. But her crews were more determined than ever. They had proven that the Vorthok could be beaten, and now they were going to finish the job. "All ships," Lisa said over the communication channel. "This is our final battle. We came here to save the Zilani, and we are not leaving until the job is done." The response came from every human vessel at once. "Aye, Admiral." But before the battle could begin, something unexpected happened. Captain Cathara contacted the human fleet from the last Zilani world. Admiral Carter, the Crystal Captain, said, "Our people are safe. Your civilian ships have evacuated everyone from our remaining colonies. You're all aboard your transport vessels." Lisa felt a wave of relief wash over her. Sam, Chen, and the other civilian pilots had completed their mission. Every living Zilani was now under human protection. "Thank you, Captain," Lisa replied. "Your people will be safe, we promise."
"Admiral,
"You have already done more than we ever dreamed possible. You came when we called for help, and you brought hope with you. But you do not need to fight this last battle. You can leave now with honor." Lisa looked out at the approaching Vorthok fleet, then at her own damaged ships and tired crews. They had already achieved their mission. The Zilani were safe. They could retreat now, and no one would call them cowards. But that was not the human way. "Captain Cathara," Lisa said, "we did not come here just to evacuate your people. We came here to make sure the Vorthok never threaten anyone again. This ends today." The final battle began differently than the others. Instead of charging straight at the enemy, Admiral Carter ordered her fleet to form a defensive line around the Zilani homeworld. She wanted the Vorthok to come to her. The machine intelligence was desperate now. It had lost hundreds of ships and still could not understand how inferior organic creatures had defeated its perfect tactical systems. The AI decided to use its most powerful weapon, fear. The Vorthok ships began broadcasting images of all the species they had destroyed over the centuries. 17 different alien races, billions of lives ended by machine weapons. The broadcasts were meant to terrify the humans and break their will to fight. But the humans had a different reaction. Captain Rick Davis saw the images and felt his anger growing. "Look at what they did," he said to his crew. "Look at all those innocent people they murdered." Commander Nathan Price watched the recordings of entire worlds being sterilized and made a promise. "Never again," he said. "This stops here." Tony Blake saw images of peaceful trading ships being destroyed for no reason other than containing living creatures. It reminded him of what had happened to Lisa Santos' sister. "They think fear will stop us," he said to his mercenaries. "They are about to learn how wrong they are." The Vorthok charged forward, expecting the humans to break and run when faced with overwhelming numbers. But the human line held firm. Every ship stood its ground, ready to fight to the death, to protect the innocent. The battle was fierce and terrible. Human ships exploded under concentrated enemy fire, their crews dying in flashes of light and metal. But for every human vessel destroyed, the defenders took down 2 or 3 Vorthok ships. Captain Beth Rogers pushed the UES Vengeance to its limits. Using the massive dreadnought as a mobile fortress, the ship's thick armor absorbed punishment. That would have destroyed smaller vessels, while its powerful guns struck back at the enemy with devastating effect. "Keep fighting," Beth shouted to her crew as another enemy salvo rocked the ship. "We hold the line." Commander Julie Martinez discovered that the Vorthok AI was still malfunctioning from the previous battles. Enemy ships were making basic tactical errors, leaving themselves open to attack. She exploited every mistake, leading her squadron in precise strikes against vulnerable targets. "Their computer brain is still broken," she reported to Admiral Carter. "They are fighting like amateurs." Lisa Santos had been given command of a captured Vorthok vessel, and she was using it to devastating effect. The enemy ships did not recognize her as a threat until it was too late, allowing her to attack from within their own formation. "Surprise," she said as she fired the alien weapons at point-blank range into a Vorthok cruiser, but the real turning point came when Sam, Chen, and the other civilian pilots did something that no one expected. Instead of staying safely away from the battle, they flew their transport ships directly into the combat zone. "Chen, what are you doing?" Admiral Carter demanded. "Get those civilians out of there," Admiral Sam replied. "These ships are carrying the entire Zilani population. Every crystal person who is still alive is aboard our vessels. If we run away and you lose this battle, the Vorthok will hunt us down and kill them all anyway." Lisa realized he was right. There was nowhere to run. This was the last stand for both humans and Zilani. "Then we make our stand together," she said. The civilian ships took positions behind the military vessels, adding their small weapons to the human firepower. It was not much, but it was enough to tip the balance. If Vorthok found themselves facing not just a military fleet, but an entire community united in defense of the innocent. The Vorthok AI finally suffered complete system failure. Overwhelmed by human unpredictability and desperate to achieve victory, the machine intelligence made a fatal error. It ordered all remaining ships to ram the human fleet at maximum speed, but the humans were ready. Admiral Carter had been expecting something like this. As the enemy vessels charged forward, the human fleet scattered in all directions, then reformed behind the Vorthok ships. The machines had committed themselves to a course they could not change. All ships opened fire. Lisa commanded. The concentrated firepower of the entire human fleet struck the Vorthok vessels from behind. Ship after ship exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The mighty empire that had conquered 17 species was finally meeting its match. When the last Vorthok ship was destroyed, silence fell over the battlefield. The humans had won, but the cost had been terrible. Almost half their fleet was gone. Thousands of brave men and women who had died to protect people they had never met. Captain Cathara spoke for all the Zilani when she contacted Admiral Carter one final time. "Admiral, how can we ever repay you for what you have done?" Lisa looked out at the debris field that had once been the Vorthok fleet, then at her own damaged ships. "You do not need to repay us, Captain. Friends help friends. That is what the Zilani taught us long ago. What will you do now?" Cathara asked. "We will stay," Lisa said. "We will patrol this space and make sure no one else suffers what your people suffered. The galaxy needs to know that there are still those who will stand up to bullies." Word of the human victory spread quickly through known space. Species that had cowered before the Vorthok began to hope again. The machines that had seemed unstoppable had been defeated by creatures who fought with heart instead of logic. The Zilani offered their crystal technology to help rebuild the human fleet. And dozens of other species requested defensive alliances with Earth. The humans who had arrived as backup for one small nation found themselves at the center of a new galactic coalition. But Admiral Carter never forgot why they had come. When reporters asked her about the victory, she always gave the same answer. "We did not come here to be heroes. We came because someone needed help, and that is what humans do. Keep our promises." The galaxy had learned an important lesson. When humans promise backup, they do not just send help, they send hope.